In the early hours of November 5, 2025, a deadly miscalculation unfolded off the coast of Venezuela. What should have been a routine patrol spiraled into a high-risk confrontation as a Venezuelan Navy squadron, acting on faulty intelligence, moved to intercept what they believed was a lone U.S. destroyer. But they were wrong. Very wrong. Instead of a single ship, those patrol boats were speeding directly toward one of the most powerful naval formations on Earth, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, armed, alert, and fully prepared to defend itself. What happened next pushed both sides to the brink. Misidentified radar returns, escalating warnings, weapons locking on from every direction, and a 6-second window where a single nervous trigger pull could have ignited a shooting war. And tonight we're taking you inside that moment. Before we dive into the full breakdown of this near disaster, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss urgent updates, deep dive reports, and new military analysis as soon as they drop. At 4:36 a.m., inside the quiet naval yards of Puerto Cabello, four Venezuelan patrol boats slipped away from the pier under strict radio silence. No chatter, no lights, no signals. Just the low growl of diesel engines pushing them into open water. These weren't large warships, far from it. Each boat carried only light armor, a 12.7mm heavy machine gun, and an aging Soviet-era rocket launcher. Small, fast, and dangerously overconfident, they were designed for coastal intimidation runs, not for real combat. But their orders tonight were delivered with absolute certainty: intercept the lone U.S. destroyer crossing into Bolivarian waters. The crews believed they were about to carry out a quick, controlled show of force. A warning pass. A recorded standoff. Nothing more. What they didn't know, what no one in their chain of command seemed to realize, was that their intelligence report was already outdated. Critically outdated. The target they were racing toward wasn't a lonely American destroyer at all. It was a 100,000-ton nuclear-powered aircraft carrier surrounded by 6 fully armed escort ships. A floating fortress capable of launching an entire air wing and erasing threats long before they ever got close. But to these 4 small boats cutting through the pre-dawn waves, none of that was visible. Not yet. All they knew was the mission. All they felt was the adrenaline. And every passing minute pulled them deeper toward a confrontation they were never built to survive. While the Venezuelan patrol boats sliced through the dark waters, convinced they were closing in on a lone American destroyer, another reality loomed just beyond the horizon. A reality so massive it dwarfed everything they thought they knew about the mission. Out there, hidden in the early morning haze, was the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a 100,000-ton steel giant, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier stretching 4.5 acres from bow to stern. A floating city. A weapon platform unlike anything else in the Caribbean. And she wasn't alone. Flanking her were 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Gravely and USS Mason, each carrying more than 90 vertical launch missile cells packed with interceptors, surface strike weapons, and defensive systems built to obliterate threats long before they reached shooting distance. Circling farther out was the Ticonderoga-class cruiser USS Philippine Sea, acting as overwatch, scanning a surveillance bubble that reached hundreds of miles in every direction. Above them, cutting slow arcs through the sky, were 2 MH-60 or Seahawk helicopters, their infrared cameras sweeping the sea surface while sonar systems probed for anything that moved. Every radar, every sensor, every satellite feed, all linked in real time through the carrier's Combat Information Center, creating a unified battlefield picture that no small patrol boat could ever hope to hide from. So when the Venezuelan squadron accelerated, 4 fast blips pushing north at over 40 knots, the entire U.S. strike group saw it at the exact same moment. No confusion. No guesswork. Just 4 speeding contacts suddenly lighting up a network designed to track missiles, submarines, and aircraft across an ocean. Inside the American command centers, operators leaned in. Screen markers changed color. Identification tags updated. The tension sharpened like a blade. Someone whispered the call sign, Skunk Alpha, 4 of them. And from that moment forward, the clock began ticking toward a confrontation none of those Venezuelan sailors were prepared for. The first warning came from the American side. A calm, professional broadcast cut through the darkness on internationally monitored maritime channels. Unidentified vessels approaching from the south. This is U.S. Navy warship. Alter course immediately. Silence. No response. No acknowledgement. Just 4 fast-moving returns on radar, continuing to push toward the strike group. On the Venezuelan side, the patrol boats tightened formation. 2 shifted left, 2 shifted right, a textbook pincer move, the kind used to box in a single destroyer. To them it was a confident maneuver. To the Americans it looked like an encirclement attempt. That's when the Eisenhower's flight deck snapped to life. A Seahawk helicopter lifted off, rotors slicing the pre-dawn air. Its sensors locked onto the speeding boats within seconds, sending live video straight to the combat centers of every ship in the group. Now the US Navy had crystal clear visuals, for small, lightly armed, fast attack craft, pushing far closer than any responsible commander would ever allow. And still, the American rules of engagement held firm. Do not engage unless fired upon. No one wanted this to turn into a war. But each passing second made that outcome more possible. The air got heavier. The radio stayed silent. And both sides moved one step closer to a line no one could afford to cross. The first crack in their confidence came from the radar console. The Venezuelan radar officer frowned, adjusted the gain, then leaned closer. The return on his screen was wrong. It was too large, too wide, too massive to match the profile they'd been briefed on. He rebooted the sweep. Same result. The target labeled Echo 2 wasn't a nimble destroyer. It was a continent. "Capitan," he said, voice tightening. "This contact, it's enormous." The captain stepped over, irritated. "What do you mean enormous? It's one ship." The radar officer swallowed hard and expanded the contact outline. The shape filled nearly half the display. A destroyer is 500 feet long. This silhouette was double that, and then some. His voice cracked. "Sir, Echo 2 is not a destroyer. It's a carrier. A carrier, senor." The bridge went dead silent. A carrier meant only one thing. They hadn't just approached an American warship. They had charged directly into the center of a US Navy carrier strike group, the most powerful formation on the ocean. The captain's face drained of color. For the first time, he understood exactly what they were facing. A 100,000-ton nuclear-powered supercarrier, surrounded by heavily armed escorts, all watching their every move. They weren't intercepting. They weren't warning. They weren't intimidating anyone. They were 4 small boats charging headfirst into a steel fortress built for world wars. The captain whispered the only words that fit the moment. "Dios mío, we just sailed into death." And now, with the truth finally visible on their screens, panic began to grip the crew, because they realized the Americans had known exactly who they were from the start, and had still shown restraint. But restraint doesn't last forever. The moment the Venezuelan captain realized the truth, he shouted for the helmsman to slow down. But the sea had already chosen its momentum, and fate was only seconds ahead. In a desperate attempt to signal non-hostile intent, one of the Venezuelan boats fired a warning shot into the water. A small burst meant to say, "We want you to stop." But to the US Navy, watching 4 fast attack craft push toward the carrier, that muzzle flash meant something completely different. It meant threat. Within a second, alarms rippled through the American formation. On the Eisenhower and her escorts, combat systems updated automatically. Gunfire detected. Unknown vessels. Locking tracks. Red lights washed across the CIC consoles. Weapons officers straightened in their seats. The destroyer's radars snapped into tight beam focus, painting all 4 Venezuelan boats with precision targeting. Every sailor aboard those US ships knew what those tones meant. The system was ready to fire. Back on the Venezuelan lead boat, panic hit like a wave. Radar screens lit up with new symbols, not 1, not 2, but multiple targeting beams sweeping over them. Red indicators. Threat markers. Tones they had never heard before. The captain's voice broke as he yelled across the cabin. "Cease avance. Cease approach. Full stop." His crew scrambled, throttled down, hard rudder, frantic motions. But the distance was nearly gone, and the Americans already interpreted the gunshot as an escalation. The Venezuelan sailors felt the dread settle in their bones. They had just fired in the direction of a United States aircraft carrier. And now the most powerful navy on Earth was seconds away from firing back. By the time the Venezuelan boats began to slow, it was already too late. The spark was lit. And the next 6 seconds would decide whether the Caribbean stayed calm, or exploded into war. The Eisenhower's Combat Information Center went red in an instant. Not flashing lights, not sirens blaring. Just a calm, professional declaration over the intercom. Condition 1. Weapons release authorized for self-defense. Every sailor on deck felt the weight of those words. Condition 1 wasn't a drill. It wasn't a warning. It meant all weapon systems were hot, loaded, and ready to fire instantly. The phalanx CIWS was turrets spun into position, barrels whirring at 4,500 rounds per minute, capable of shredding anything that dared cross the line. Every missile launcher was primed. Every targeting system locked. Above them, the Seahawk helicopters hovered low, scanning the Venezuelan boats with high-resolution sensors. The pilot's headset picked up something alarming. Radar from the lead vessel has locked onto Gravely. They've painted us. That was the final trigger, the point at which any hostile action could escalate into an actual engagement. One misfired gun, one careless move, and a real battle would erupt in seconds. Inside the strike group, every officer held their breath, eyes glued to screens that tracked four fast, small blips closing relentlessly. The mathematics were brutal. For lightly armed patrol boats versus a carrier strike group, any engagement would be one-sided. Any hesitation could be catastrophic. And yet, for now, the U.S. Navy did nothing. They waited, silent, professional, calculating every movement, watching for a single spark that could ignite war. The tension was suffocating. The sea seemed to hold its breath. And the Venezuelan crews, unaware of the extent of the firepower now trained on them, were still hurtling forward. 6 seconds. That was all it would take to decide whether this near miss remained just that, or turned into headlines no one wanted to write. For 60 seconds, the Caribbean became a pressure cooker of tension. One of the Venezuelan patrol boats, the lead vessel, surged forward, engines screaming, cutting a straight path toward USS Mason. It was a high-speed dash that left no room for error, a move that could have triggered a cascade of weapons firing from the carrier strike group. Mason's crew reacted instantly. The destroyer fired 2 green flares into the sky, the standard U.S. Navy signal for Turnaway now. The flashes lit up the pre-dawn darkness, painting the waves below in bright, warning bursts. Inside the lead boat, a deck gunner fumbled. His fingers traced the charging handle, and the metal-on-metal click echoed into the microphone of the hovering Seahawk. Every detail, the sound of the trigger being racked, was transmitted live to the American command centers. Inside the U.S. Navy, hearts didn't race. Training, discipline, and deadly precision took over. Every weapon system was ready. Every gunner poised. Every tactical officer running the rules of engagement checklist. They were prepared to fire. A single shot, a misjudged flash, a twitch of a trigger, and war would have started here and now. But the Venezuelan boat suddenly veered hard to port. Engines whining, water spraying in white arcs, they pulled away from Mason's path. The other 3 vessels followed, their formation breaking, retreating slowly but under constant American surveillance. For 60 seconds, it had been too close, too fast, and entirely unpredictable. The U.S. Navy maintained a tense calm, keeping weapons hot but restrained, knowing that one wrong move could have triggered the deadliest firefight either side had ever seen outside of war. And then, just like that, the immediate danger began to recede. But the lesson was etched clearly in the minds of everyone at sea. In this arena, a single second can determine life, death, or international crisis. At exactly 6:08 a.m., the lead Venezuelan patrol boat executed a sharp 90-degree turn to port, engines screaming and water spraying in massive arcs. In that instant, the tense geometry of the confrontation shifted. Every weapons system on the U.S. ships remained locked on. Targeting computers tracked the movement with perfect precision. Phalanx turrets, missile launchers, and CIWS systems were ready to fire at a moment's notice. Yet the Americans held their fire. Every gunner, every tactical officer, every radar operator understood the stakes. One burst, one misjudgment, and the Caribbean could have exploded into an international conflict. The remaining Venezuelan boats followed suit, abandoning formation and retreating slowly but under the watchful eyes of the carrier strike group. There was no applause, no relief, just the hum of rotating radar and the soft thrum of engines in the pre-dawn air. The U.S. Navy kept all weapons hot and ready, eyes fixed on every movement, but no shots were fired. Their restraint was absolute, a deliberate decision to prevent escalation despite the provocation. For those brief, harrowing minutes, The line between near disaster and total war was thinner than a fingertip. And as the Venezuelan boats disappeared over the horizon, the strike group maintained formation, aware that the crisis was temporarily averted, not over. It was a maneuver that didn't just save lives, it saved an entire region from sliding into conflict. By mid-morning, the confrontation at sea had already migrated to a different battlefield, the world of politics, media, and diplomacy. Venezuela wasted no time. State media released a short, grainy video showing the 4 patrol boats racing across open waters, engines roaring, white wakes trailing behind. The narration boldly claimed, "We have successfully repelled an incursion by U.S. forces in Bolivarian waters." The message was clear, a victory narrative crafted for domestic consumption and international posturing. But the Pentagon responded just as swiftly. Within hours, the U.S. Navy released full radar logs and high-resolution satellite imagery, proving that the Eisenhower strike group had been operating well within international waters, more than 80 miles from the Venezuelan coast. The evidence was clear, methodical, and impossible to misinterpret. And so began the exchange of accusations. Venezuela called it sovereign defense. The U.S. called it reckless brinkmanship. Diplomats scrambled. In backrooms from Washington to Caracas, admirals, foreign ministers, and national security advisors raced to cool tensions. Phone calls flew across continents. Security briefings were convened and contingency plans reviewed. Every move, every statement, carried the potential to ignite a much larger conflict. The sea may have calmed, but the battle of narratives had begun. And while both sides publicly claimed restraint, every officer, sailor, and policymaker knew that the difference between peace and war could be measured in a single misinterpreted action, a single misheard order, or a single nervous finger on a trigger. The near miss had passed at sea. The fight had now shifted to the arena of politics, propaganda, and perception, where victories and losses were decided not by missiles or guns, but by who could control the story. The Venezuelan patrol crews had operated under a single, critical misconception. Their intelligence was 48 hours out of date. The lone destroyer they were chasing had long since been replaced by a full carrier strike group. Their radar returns were static, old coordinates fed from shore-based systems, not real-time tracking. At sea, appearances can be deceiving. On a small, outdated radar screen, a destroyer and a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier can look surprisingly similar. Large steel hulls, flat decks, complex superstructures, and the constant reflection of waves and electromagnetic interference can all create confusion, especially in pre-dawn light and rough seas. Compounding the risk was a psychological phenomenon naval officers call threat mirroring. Each side interpreted the other's movements as aggressive, even when they were defensive or routine. A small acceleration? That's a shift in formation, preparing to attack. Human judgment was as critical and as fallible as the technology tracking them. The night, the darkness, and the ocean itself became participants. Low light obscured detail. Radar echoes bounced unpredictably. Waves and swell distorted reflections. Even a cautious approach could suddenly appear hostile. All these factors combined into a perfect storm. Poor intelligence plus outdated radar plus optical illusions plus human interpretation equals seconds away from war. In hindsight, the incident revealed a hard truth. Modern navies rely as much on human judgment as on technology, and one misread signal, one misunderstood order, or one overeager hand can spiral into international crisis before anyone even says fire. The Caribbean that morning hadn't erupted in war, but it had flashed a warning that the line between routine patrol and armed conflict is thinner than anyone dares to admit. Officially, the Pentagon labeled the confrontation a routine encounter. A bland phrase, sterile, carefully chosen to avoid headlines and diplomatic backlash. But the sailors who stood on those decks, who watched radar scopes tremble with fast-moving contacts, who kept their fingers inches from the triggers, they called it something very different. The closest we've ever been to real combat. To them it wasn't routine. It was real, it was immediate, and it was one mistake away from turning the Caribbean into a battlefield. In the hours after the standoff, one truth echoed across every wardroom and command center. War doesn't begin with a declaration. It begins with a misunderstanding, a misread radar echo, a delayed radio call, a nervous gunner cycling his weapon at the wrong second. A patrol boat turning 10 degrees too far inside a destroyer's bow. That's all it takes to rewrite history. Incidents like this remind us that the ocean, vast, silent, unpredictable, does not forgive confusion. It magnifies it. It warps it. And before anyone realizes what's happening, ships are locking weapons, alarms are screaming, and young sailors are asking themselves a question they hoped they'd never have to answer. So now the question comes to you. You're the commander on the bridge. Your screens show 4 fast boats closing at 40 knots. Your helicopter pilot calls out, "Radar lock confirmed." Your weapons officer says, "Target's inside 1,000 yards." You have seconds to decide. Do you hold fire and risk your ship? Or do you squeeze the trigger first and risk starting a war? Tell us in the comments below. What would you do? The story of that early November morning is a stark reminder of how fragile peace can be at sea. Venezuela had misidentified their target. They picked the wrong day. They picked the wrong ship. And in doing so, they almost confronted an entire U.S. carrier strike group instead of a lone destroyer. Had a single gun fired in the wrong direction, the Caribbean could have erupted into full-scale conflict in seconds. Lives lost, nations on edge, history rewritten, all from a misunderstanding compounded by outdated intelligence and high-speed decisions. Yet restraint prevailed. Discipline held. Technology, training, and human judgment converged to prevent disaster. But the lesson is clear. The line between a tense encounter and war is as thin as the tip of a finger on a trigger. As the Eisenhower strike group steamed north and the Venezuelan boats returned to port, the message was unmistakable. Out here, in the dark waters of the Caribbean, there is no replay button. Every decision is final. Every second counts. And every sailor, commander, and nation must respect the fragile margin that separates caution from catastrophe. This was not just a near miss at sea. It was a warning to the world. The ocean conceals mistakes, but it never forgives them.